minority staff from various places in the United States. And all we had to do was just sit and listen. We were 8 out of a delegation of 500 people down there. And Ronald went on to talk about how much money, 400 million at that time, they were getting from UMTA for transportation. He said, of course, you know, this money comes from the gasoline tax. Well, I didn't know anything about the gasoline tax. I guess I was just ignorant. And when he said that, it struck a bell. I said, that's what I thought too. I'm buying gas. I'm paying that rent too. And I'm not getting anything back from it. And that was what set me off. But I learned about the gasoline tax. And I thought of all the people who were buying gas and put 8 cents at that time into that transportation fund. And that money was going for building highways. And we wanted helping to build the highways and bridges. And we wanted helping to build transportation system. And that set me off. I didn't like it at all. And that's what caused me to come back and call 2 or 3 people together.
Who did you call?
Jerry Anderson, who was a very fiery person. I won't say the kind of things he would say.
We can only imagine.
A fellow by the name of Woods, who was an attorney from St. Louis, and Newsom, who is now just all these people are dead now. I'm the only one that's living. Newsom, who followed me as president of COMTO. We were the instigators of the system. What happened at that time, there was a Hispanic who was head of UMTA. I can't think of his name immediately, but in Mexico City, I went down into the little coffee shop and sat down to have something to eat. And a very nice looking plump woman was sitting at the side. There's a good old Southern boy, I just struck up conversation. And presently, a gentleman came in and sat down on the other side of her and introduced himself to me as being the administrative of UMTA. I said, Lord, this is my chance. Teach me to say the right thing. And I told him what I thought about minorities involvement in transportation. And he says, you know what, I think you're right. He says, I'm going to look into this when I get back to Washington. When he went back to Washington, Harold Williams was his assistant. He directed Harold Williams to discover the minorities in the United States who had significant jobs in public transit. Harold Williams did that. He found 20 who were doing various levels of authority. Only 20, all of the United States. UMTA paid their expenses to come to Washington for a meeting at Harvard University. And at that meeting at Harvard University, COMTO was born. Harold Williams, I must admit, was a better strategist than I was. I just said what I had to say and never did. Now, Harold Williams actually diagrammed for me a strategy for organizing all over this country. That's the great contribution that Harold made. That's why you have 39 chapters, because we were divided into regions in that chart that he drew. And there was to be a COMTO in every one of these regions.
Is there room for another chapter?
I beg your pardon?
Is there room for another chapter?
Oh yeah, that's true. For chapters anywhere. But that was the beginning. And it has grown over the years to 39. And as you influence your brothers and sisters to take hold of the situation and organize themselves, in many places we are no better off than we were when we started. They're still treating us the same way. And you have to be on the job of organizing, claiming what is rightfully yours, and making it plain that you don't intend to stop.
Reverend, let me ask you this. It takes a particular kind of person to go out and do what you did, to say the things that you said. Talk about the characteristics of the people that came alongside and said, we have to make this happen. I think as our president said when he was running, he said, "Pueda, yes, we can." What were the characteristics of those people that came alongside and worked with you to make COMTO happen?
The first thing you must do is believe. When you believe, you must recognize your condition. Fourth, you must want to change it. Third, you must make a move to change it. That's fourth. You must do something to change it. If it's no more than stomp your foot and make people know that you're unhappy. When I was in the seminary, I had a teacher by the name of Howard Thurman, a great philosopher, a mystic. He says, when I was a little boy down in Florida, I went barefooted. My people were poor. And I was walking along the road one day, and I stepped on a little black snake. I was afraid to move, but I knew as long as I kept my foot on the snake, that the snake wasn't going to bite me. He couldn't bite me. But I could feel the vibrations of that snake running all the way up through my leg to my brain. A lot of times we have to keep our foot on the snake so that he feels the vibration. And that's the way you must do as members of COMTO. You can always move your foot, but you can't react to the vibration. I just leave that with you.
Because I have one final question for you, but I'm going to move over to Jackie Davison now. Jackie, if an organization is going to grow, and we've heard the beginnings of it, change is inevitable. True? Okay. Almost 20 years later, enter the fearless Jackie Davison. When you came on board, where was the organization? What state was it in?
When I came on board, the organization was this gentleman's group of chapters with no central location, no central plan, no central operation.
Well, based on what you've learned in this time, I see you're a man who likes to do things decently and in order. So what was in your mind after you assessed the situation?
Basically, what I felt was that in order for COMTO to be what they thought it should be, that had to be big, and it had to be permanent. It had to have a place where people knew they were located. It had to be at the seat of power. And I thought that we had to have an office. We had to have an office. And it had to be in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so you had a conversation with yourself and you said, self? What did self say?
I sat down and I thought about it and I said, I came from entertainment business, and I said, how do I do this? I mean, what do we have to do? And I said, that, you know, we have to have people whose sole job it is to make this organization grow. They can't be working at their agencies and running agencies and being accountants or being drivers or being whatever. They have to be solely focused on growing organizations.
Yeah, well, that takes money.
It takes money.
And so,
I said, this $20, $40, $60 we pay for membership, it won't cut it. So, what do we need to do? And I said, you know, the beneficiaries of all of these people who are writing and these people who are managing and doing this work are agencies. I mean, they benefit from it. But they also have an obligation to contribute to the development of these people who are working for them.
but did they see that?
The ones that we talked to did because they were people who looked like us, but had never been put in a position to give to a level that was comparable to what it needed to be to have their organization grow. And they were willing to face the recrimination, and they were fearless.
There are a bunch of fearless folk around here in COMTO.
But it was because they believed. It was because they did not have, they didn't have a willingness to make history. They had a willingness to make a difference.
So it wasn't about ego, about it's good to
The only ego in the room was mine. and it was mine because I had to believe that what I wanted to do was unassailable. All of the naysayers, all of the people who did not want to belong and be a part, and there were people who did not want to belong. There were ones who the status quo was fine for them. There were people who were invited to the club, and they decided that one was enough, or two was enough. But there were also people who did not care to be out front and elevated, but they wanted to make a difference. And so when I said, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to charge $1,500 for the small acre, $3,000 for the little larger nose, $5,000 for the one with little larger double, $10,000 for the one with little nose, and we're going to tell them that's what it is.
And I said, folks said, who do you think you are?
Folks said, I don't know if we can do that, but there was a lady in Savannah, Georgia, who was a county commissioner named Dean Frazier, who was my majority whip. And the one who we could not move willingly,
She whipped.
I put Dean in. And by force of her character and her ability to embarrass, come to this family problem, people gave, not only did they give, and there was a brother general manager in East Chicago, Indiana, named Johnny Florence. His small label, his fee was $1,500. Called Johnny, and Johnny said, okay, but we can give you more than that. Johnny gave us $3,500. Birmingham, ours was $2,500. I was chairman of the board, and so I'm going to ask others to give. I'm going to have to leave. We gave 5, and then we gave ours in advance 2 years. We gave 10. And we called other people and it was because they recognized these were people who were born of the civil rights era and had parents who were involved and had been involved themselves. So they understood. And it was surprisingly a whole lot easier than I thought to get the money.
So, people contributed.
Yes.
They contributed over and above. They did exceeding abundantly above. You know, when I look at everything that COMTO is today, your budget is great. Can I get a day there? But there's still more growth to go. What do people sitting out here need to do?
You know, one of the things that we talked about was in the inclusion and also in the development of the youth. But we have to, and it was evident then, that we have to educate. making decisions about who place people in positions to manage and govern those individuals. That's the education aspect. We got to educate the politicians, and not the politicians who are strictly involved in this promotion. But we have to educate them about the 3 or 4 things that we talked about when we got started. When we sat in the dark room, and when we talked on the phone, Paul, the Will, Bobby Griffin, the Gail Holidays, Jim Masters, what we talked about was that this is about jobs, it's about contracts, and it's about the forces of politics that affect economics in the community. And that's the education that we recognize that we have to put together. So all those people, mayors who make appointments to boards, they have to understand that. Board members who are appointed, they have to understand that. Their job is not to make personal history. Their job always are to make a difference. Not just for themselves and their families. And we didn't grudge that. You know, you take care of your family. But take care of all these others to give them an opportunity.
With success, unfortunately, comes a downside. How do you define that today?
The downside is complacent. The downside of success is the complacency that develops when people think they have arrived and that they don't have to do anything else. They don't have to reach back and pull anybody else up. You know, it's believing that, I don't have a problem. Look who I am. I mean, I did this. You know, I didn't have anybody push me. Or I was my support. But they fail to recognize that support for what you do sometimes is very much unseen. It is not evident all the time based on someone coming to you and say, I'm going to do this for you. It is oftentimes the people who represent you, you have to have friends who represent you in the United States. And that's the support that needs to happen, but that is the support that is lacking in success sometimes.
We have just a couple of minutes left, but I want to make sure that we really understand as an organization that we have to tell our story. I can tell you as a journalist, you can have the best story to ever since sliced bread, but if nobody knows your story, you don't count. So we have to beat the drum and tell the story of COMTO. We have to pass the history down. What else can we do in terms of educating?
It brings together. I mean, the education, oftentimes the education that needs to take place that we all can just tell our witnesses and tell it our own story. Just tell it our own story. And that's where it begins. And it begins with not the story of just me, but the story of us and they. And that's the education that takes, you know, all the time. You know, it is the same witnessing we do. You know, what changed us? You know, what happened? Where we were? What took place? What we were given? You know, what we feel about what has happened to us. And that's the story that we tell, and we have to tell it as we go. We have to tell it when we are talking to a student. We have to tell it when we meet someone who's suffering. We have to tell it when we have people who need jobs and are lost and can't figure out where they go. And then we have to tell it in a broad form by developing programs to put it out there continually. But we have to tell it in a way that we tell it. We cannot fear. Fear will move, but it'll never win.
And fear can paralyze.
It can paralyze.
But we're not at a point where we can afford to be paralyzed. As we wrap it up, I'd like to ask Reverend Moore, and I would like to ask Jackie Davison, because I feel like there are visionaries here. The vision had to start in one place, and it had to move to another. And the rest of you all are visionaries as well, whether you know it or not. Check the inside of your lapel, it says visionary. But I'd like to ask you, Reverend Moore, what is the one thought that you would like to leave with the audience this morning in terms of what they can do, what they should do? How can they leave COMTO in a better place than where it is even it today?
There are two things that enter my mind. One is, let your reach exceed your grasp. Once you lay hands on something and you don't have anything beyond that, you are through. Let your reach exceed your grasp. The second thing is what you call receding goals. Never feel that you've reached your goal. Your goals should always be receding. As you reach one goal, there's another one ahead of it. Finally, building on what Jackie has said, train people for what is to come and not what is passing away. That's where the jobs are, in the field of what is to come for young people. When I was a child, young man, the old smoke engine train was the thing. Then they moved to diesel trains. Now they have these high-speed trains coming into play. How many of our people are trained for that new technology? You see, things are always changing. And we have to train people for what is to come and not what is passing away. That's where we lose our jobs, because we stop training ourselves. And when we stop that, the job passes away and they don't need us anymore. I'll stop like that.
Thank you. I don't preach.
My final thought is always thinking towards the development and the belief in it. This is the first look within. I mean, see where you are. I mean, always take inventory of what you have and figure out how what you have can be translated so that the contributions you make are not arithmetic, they're geometric. You know, the progressions of major leaps, they're not 1, 2, 3, they're 8, 12, 24, 26.
Exponential.
Yes, yes. And that if you have the capacity, but don't have fear. You know, don't be afraid to fail. And don't be afraid to have people not like you and not care. You know, because you know that tunnel is dark. And when you have to walk through that tunnel in that campus, that wax is sliding down the burning edge. But the process of illumination requires you to be willing to accept the thing that goes with guiding people through that tunnel. And that's what you have to do.
Let's give our... Reverend Worthing would like to say one more thing, and I think you ought to be able to. Go right ahead.
The name of the company administrator at that time was Villarreal, a Hispanic. We have always been rooted in interracial culture. Keep it up. And I'm glad to see that it's interracial here today. That fits not only what is right, it fits the federal definition.